You didn't respect people that you could bully. You didn't respect them, and you test them.
In your era, what was it like having to guard a guy like Shaq?
Impossible.
You saying Shaq? Everybody in here is supposed to say
Press row, courtside, post-game hallways where players say things they would never say into a microphone. That is where I spent my career. 30 years covering professional basketball from close enough to see a man's face when the fear showed up. I saw fear in this league exactly twice. Real fear. Not nerves before a big game. Not anxiety about a matchup. The kind of fear that changes how a professional athlete moves their body before the ball is even inbounded. Both times, the other team had Shaquille O'Neal. Nobody has told this story the way it actually happened, until right now. Stay with me, because what players told me privately after games against Shaq is different from anything that ever made it onto television. And it explains why veterans who had spent a decade in this league, men who had faced Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing and Karl Malone, described seeing Shaquille O'Neal for the first time as something closer to a car accident than a basketball game. Larry Bird said it first. This was 1990. Reggie Miller had a show in Annapolis. Bird was the guest. They were talking about Jordan and Magic and Thomas and all the players who defined that era. Bird stopped the conversation and said, "There is a young kid out of LSU, goes by the name of Shaquille O'Neal. I have never seen anything like it before. He is going to be the next big superstar." He said the best player in the world right now is probably Shaquille O'Neal. And once he gets to the league and gets established, he is going to be right up there with the best of all of them. Larry Bird, the man who had competed against the greatest players of two full generations, who did not impress easily and did not say things he did not mean, said this in 1990, before Shaq had played a single NBA minute. A man named Douglas worked arena operations for the Knicks for 14 years and had standing access to the tunnel during warm-ups. Stood 6 feet from me before a game in 1992. He watched Shaq go through layup lines and said without turning his head, "Patrick is going to need a different plan tonight." I have never seen a human being shaped like that move that quickly. Douglas had watched Patrick Ewing prepare for every big man in the league for a decade. He knew what concerned looked like. That was concerned. Here is what people say about Shaquille O'Neal. They say he was big. They say he was powerful. They say he was dominant. Here is what actually happened. 7'1", nearly 300 pounds, moving like a guard, jumping like a power forward, and from the very first night of his rookie season, operating with the confidence of someone who already knew the outcome. Not arrogance, something quieter and more dangerous than arrogance. Certainty. Shaq did not arrive in the NBA and grow into his dominance. He arrived dominant. The game did not teach him what he could do. He already knew. Every center he faced in those first seasons discovered it the same way. By catching an elbow in the chest or getting their shot launched into the third row and then sitting in the locker room afterward with ice on both ankles, wondering what version of basketball had just happened to them. One veteran described sitting in his locker room after his first game against Shaq. Ice on both knees, ice on both ankles, just sitting there like that, not moving, staring at the floor. He called it a welcome to the league moment. Except the league had been his home for 6 years before that night. Another player described guarding Shaq in practice, just practice, and walking into the training room the next morning, unable to move his back. The head trainer told him, "Do not feel bad. I have seen Shaquille do this to dozens and dozens of players. He could not walk properly for 2 weeks. In practice, 2 weeks. From one afternoon of guarding him in a setting where nobody was keeping score." David Robinson was there. Patrick Ewing was there. Hakeem Olajuwon was there. These were not soft players. These were the finest centers in the history of the league. Men who had spent entire careers developing the skills and the physical tools required to protect a paint. When Shaq arrived, each one of them had to confront the same uncomfortable truth. The rules they had learned for how this position worked did not apply to this person. Robinson was faster and more athletic than anyone who had ever played center before him. Hakeem had footwork that made defenders disappear. Ewing had size and strength and 14 years of experience reading every situation the post could produce. None of it translated. You could double Shaq. You could triple him. Entire coaching staffs built defensive systems specifically designed around the problem of stopping him. And the league eventually changed its own rules, widening the lane, adjusting goaltending interpretations, doing everything institutional power could do to slow one man down. He averaged 23 points and 14 rebounds his rookie season and shot 56% from the field. That was before he had fully developed his post game, before he had refined the footwork, before he had figured out every way his combination of size and speed and instinct could be weaponized. He was also pulling down backboards, not snapping the rim, pulling the entire structure, the rim and the backboard attached to it, downward with enough force that games had to be stopped while crews came out and bent the equipment back into position. The league eventually installed hydraulic systems specifically because of him. He was breaking infrastructure that had been standing in arenas for decades. That was the rookie year. Kobe Bryant talked about the years he spent watching Shaq work in practice. The moves came one at a time. A hook shot on the left, a drop step on the right, a face-up jumper from 12 feet when the defense started cheating too far. Every season, there was something new. Every year, he arrived to training camp with another tool that had not existed the year before. Patrick Ewing described the experience of guarding him plainly. He said, Shaq was not the physically imposing person that challenged him the way Shaq did. He had guarded Robinson. He had guarded Hakeem. He called both of them great. And then he put Shaq in a separate category, without using a word for what that category was. The Knicks threw everything at him in those early seasons. Ewing, Herb Williams, Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason. 4 different players rotating through the assignment in a single game. Not because the coaching staff was confused about strategy, because no single human being could do it alone, and even 4 of them together were managing the situation rather than solving it. Shaq noticed this. He noticed everything. He came into the league with a chip on his shoulder that was specifically sized to fit each individual center who had been established before he arrived. He wanted Robinson to know. He wanted Ewing to know. He wanted Hakeem to know. The league had a standard for dominant centers, and he intended to reset it. His move to Los Angeles turned a regional phenomenon into something that the entire country organized its basketball attention around. The combination of his physical presence on the floor and his personality off it created something the league had not seen since Jordan. You knew when Shaq was in the building before you saw him. The energy of the arena changed. One player said it simply. He looked up during warm-ups. He was 7 feet tall himself and still had to look up. He stood there watching Shaq move through drills and said, "God damn." Those were his exact words. God damn. There will never be anybody like Shaquille O'Neal. That is not nostalgia. That is not the way old players talk about their era to make themselves feel important. That is the verdict of the men who had to guard him. The men who sat in defensive film sessions for 3 hours preparing for a Tuesday night in Orlando, and then went out and could not stop a single thing they had studied. You could know everything Shaq was going to do. You could watch every second of tape. You could build the perfect scheme and put your best bodies on him and rotate correctly and do every single thing right. He was still going to put you in the 4th row. The certainty was the thing, not the strength, not the size, not even the speed, which should not have been possible in a body that large. The certainty, the knowledge, present in him from the first day he stepped onto an NBA floor, that this was already decided. He was right every time.